In this lesson, we'll continue talking about domain and add range. We're also going to look at intercepts and do all of these by looking at graphs. So here we'll just draw this graph with these points and just curve it through there. And we want to find the y values at these x values. So here's the graph of f of x and f of -2. When the x value is -2, the y value is 1. And when x is 0, the y value is 3. When x is 3, the y value is 3. When x is 4, the y value is 1. So let's put a closed circle there, and at -2, 2, -2, 2, open circle, 2, 1, closed circle, and the graph goes like this. Okay, find domain and range. Well, looking at this graph, let's just start looking at x values and y values, and we can piece together the domain. So let's just make a list of x values that have a y value on the graph. Let's look at -3. -3, there's no y value, so it's not in the domain. -2, there's no y value. But -1.99 does have a y value. -1.999 has a y value. -1.9. Numbers getting close to -2 have a y value on the graph. Then let's look at -1. Yes, that's in the domain. 0, it has a point. It's in the domain. We keep going over. How about going out to 4? 4 has a point on the graph. What if we go out to 100? Will 100 have a point on the graph? And because there's an arrow that's pointing up, yes, 100 will have a point on the graph. So we're going to say that that just goes on to the right. Let's look at the y values. And at 0, no, there's no. For the y value of 0, there's no point on the graph. For the y value of 1, there is a point on the graph. So 1. 2. Well, there's no point there, but there is a point over there. 2. And then we go up to 4. Yeah, there's a point on the graph at 4. How about at 100? Because of this arrow and the graph is going to continue up, 100 will also have a point on the graph. And so we can see the y values go from 1 to infinity. We're going to include 1. And here, -2 to infinity, but we're not going to include -2. All right, try the next two. Find the domain and range for the next two. Pause the video. All right, x values that have points on a point on the graph. We're going to go to -3, no. -2, yes. -1, yes. 0, yes. 1, go out to 2. 2, yes. 3 is a no. So it looks like the domain goes from -2 to 2, -2 to 2, and we get to include those. Looking at the y values, -2, no, there's no point on the graph there. -1, yes. 0, yes. 1, 2, 3 is a yes. Just listing some of them. 4 is a no. So we start at -1 and we end at 3. From -1 to 3, including -1 and 3. This is the domain, and that's the range. All right, and the next one. We have x values. So we start looking at -1, yes, -2's, no. How about 1, 2, 3, 4? -4, yes. What about -100? Does that have a point on the graph? And we'll say yes, because that arrow looks like the graph makes the graph move, continue going out to the left. So way out to the left, -100. 1, 2, 3, -4 is on the graph. -5, -3. -2 is not. And we could write -2.1, -1.9. So we're skipping -2 because of that open circle. Then we have -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way out to the right. So we go from -infinity. We have a problem here at -2, but then we go out to +infinity. -infinity to -2, excluding -2. Then we go from -2 to infinity. Okay, the y values. -3, does it have a point on the graph? Well, the graph, if we're not careful, we'll say no. We'll say that's not in the range, not in the range, not in the range. And 0 looks like it's the first number in the range, but that's a mistake because of this arrow, and the graph would continue down. So we can go to -infinity, down to -100 as a point on the graph. All the way up, we have 0, 1, but we don't have 2. We have 1.9, 2.1. Again, here we have a problem at 2. There's a missing value. But just because that's a missing value doesn't mean we don't have this y value. So we don't have to worry about leaving 2 out of the range. 2 is in the range. This did not affect 2 being in the range because we have all these other points that are also y values of 2 on the graph. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we'll say, oh, 4. The range stops at 4. But the range doesn't stop at 4 because of this arrow pointing up, and the range is going to go to infinity. We don't skip anything, so the range goes from negative infinity to positive infinity. There's the domain and the range. Shifted up 4. So we have to go all the way up to 12 for the y-intercept. And this is at -3, -4. Okay, find the intercepts graphically and analytically or algebraically. So we see that the x-intercept is -1, 0, and the y-intercept is 0, 1. The x-intercept is -1, 0, and the y-intercept is 0, 1. So that's how we're going to verify algebraically to find the x-intercept. We take the equation and we want to know when the y value is 0. So we take the equation, set it equal to 0, square both sides, and we see that x is -1 when y is 0, and that's what we saw on the graph. And for the y-intercept has an x value of 0, so we take the function and make the x 0. Y equals 0 plus 1, so y equals 1. When x is 0, y is 1, and that's what we saw on the graph. When x is 0, y is 1. Okay, so do the same thing with these two functions. Pause the video. Looking at the graph, the x-intercept is -2, 0, and 2, 0. The y-intercept is 4, 0, 4. If we didn't have the graph, to find the x-intercept, we would make the y 0. The x-intercept has a y value of 0, so we're going to put a 0 there. And we're going to square root both sides. So now we get positive or negative 2. And that matches what we have here, positive or negative 2 with a y value of 0 for the x-intercepts. And then the y-intercept is when the x equals 0. So we have y equals 4, and that's what we had, what we saw in the graph. Here we have x-intercepts. We have negative 3, 0, and negative 4, 0. The y-intercept is at 12, so 0, 12. Then we can show that algebraically the x-intercept is when the y equals 0, so we'll put a 0 there. And we'll factor. And that's 3 times 4, and then 3 plus 4 is 7. So we get negative 3 and negative 4, which is what we saw on the graph. And then y-intercept is when the x equals 0. We have y equals 0 squared plus 7 times 0 plus 12. Y equals 12. So that's what we also saw on the graph. And that's the end of this lesson.